Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really powerful idea from the entrepreneur Naval Ravikant, and it's this. What if getting rich isn't about luck at all? What if it's actually a skill, something you can learn, just like you can learn to be happy? Let's break down his playbook.
Most of us grow up believing that wealth is kind of like a lottery, a total game of chance. You either get lucky or you don't. But what if that whole idea is just wrong? What if getting rich is a system, a skill that you can actually learn and apply?
The old playbook, well, it's pretty familiar, right? Go to a good school, get a safe job, and trade your time for money for the next 40 years. But that's usually a long, slow grind. So today, we're exploring a new playbook, one that promises a much more direct path to freedom.
Okay, let's get right into it. To win any game, you first have to understand what game you're playing. And according to Naval, that starts by completely redefining the goal itself.
First things first, let's get this straight. Wealth is not the same as money, not even close. Money is just how we move wealth around. True wealth is owning things, assets that work for you even when you're sleeping. Think businesses, software, investments, things that make money whether or not you're actively trading your time. So, this brings us to the two big games people play in life. The first is the status game. It's a zero-sum game, which means for you to win, someone else has to lose. But the money game, the game of creating wealth, is what we call a positive-sum game. You get rich by creating something society wants, which actually makes the whole pie bigger for everyone.
And here's the core argument from Naval. Creating wealth is not a random event. It's a process. It has clear inputs and outputs, and it's a skill you can absolutely develop. And it's all built on a few fundamental pillars.
This quote really gets to the heart of the mindset shift you have to make. See, you don't get rich by just doing a job where you're renting out your time. You get rich by owning a piece of a business, by owning equity. That way you're earning from the asset itself, not just from your own labor.
This new playbook is built on 4 key pillars that all work together. It starts with what's called specific knowledge. That's your unique superpower. Then you take on accountability to get both the risk and the credit. That allows you to apply leverage to multiply your impact. And finally, you capture all that value through equity. Let's break each one down.
Everything, and I mean everything, starts with this foundation, specific knowledge. You just can't be the best in the world at something you don't genuinely love. So step 1 is figuring out the unique value that only you can provide.
Specific knowledge isn't something you can get a degree in. It's not something you learn in a classroom. It's that unique thing that's found at the intersection of your natural talents and your true passions. Just think about it for a second. What's the stuff you obsess over when nobody's watching? That's where your specific knowledge is hiding.
So how do you find it? Well, you look for the things that feel like play to you, but look like hard work to everybody else. What subjects do you read about just for fun? What were you naturally good at as a kid? That's the stuff. That's where your superpower is. And this all leads to a really powerful idea. When you build your career and your business on your unique, authentic interests, you basically escape competition altogether. Why? Because nobody can compete with you at being you. Okay, so you found your superpower. That's huge. But a skill on its own can only go so far. So how do you scale it up to impact thousands, or maybe even millions of people? The answer is leverage. It's the force multiplier for your judgment and your skills. This concept has been around forever, but it's more important now than ever. Just like a physical lever lets you move a huge boulder with a little bit of effort, business leverage lets you get a massive output from a tiny input. It is, by definition, working smarter, not harder. In today's world, there are basically 3 types of leverage. You've got labor and capital, which are the traditional ones, but they both require permission. Someone has to agree to work for you, or someone has to give you their money. But the real game changer, the one that's open to pretty much everyone now, is what's called permissionless leverage, code and media. Anyone with a computer can write code or create media and use it to reach the entire world. This ladder of leverage here shows the path perfectly. You could start as a laborer with 0 leverage. Then you might become a contractor and use labor as leverage. A developer adds capital on top of that. But the very top of the ladder, that's the tech founder, someone who creates a platform like Zillow. They use permissionless code to serve millions of people at once, creating billions in value. And that's the real power of this new playbook.
A knowledge worker with the right judgment and the right leverage, like code or media, can be 1,000 times more productive than someone without it. Suddenly, your inputs are completely disconnected from your outputs.
But we have to be really clear about something. Wealth is not the end goal. It's just a tool. It's a means to get something far, far more valuable.
So the real goal is retirement, but not in the way we usually think about it. Stopping work at 65. It's reaching the point where your passive income covers all your expenses. That's the moment when you're finally free from having to sacrifice your life today for some imaginary tomorrow.
And Naval makes a really critical distinction here. The goal isn't freedom to, which is that endless chase for more pleasure, more stuff. The ultimate prize is freedom from money problems, freedom from obligations you hate, freedom from all the things that disturb your inner peace.
And this is the ultimate progression. This is the whole point. The purpose of wealth is to buy your freedom. And the purpose of that freedom is to find a state of internal peace where you're not being jerked around by your desires or your fears.
So let's recap the new playbook. First, find your specific knowledge. Then, take on public accountability under your own name to build a reputation. Apply leverage to scale your impact. And own equity to capture the financial reward. And you do all of this in the pursuit of true freedom.
And what's the most effective, most sustainable way to do all of this? Find the work that feels like play to you. Because if it feels like play, you can do it for 16 hours a day. And guess what? No one who's competing against you who feels like they're working can ever keep up with that.
And that brings us to the final and really the most important question of all, the one that only you can answer for yourself. Finding that answer isn't just the key to wealth, it's the key to designing a life of freedom, purpose, and ultimately a life of happiness.